Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this keynote session on innovations in real-world evidence. In this session, we'll have Sandipan take us through broader perspectives on real-world evidence, and then some of the latest innovations happening in this field, so that we can hear not about only what is theoretical, but what is actually happening to drive the impact and reliability of real-world evidence. We only have a short time here, so I won't take a lot of your time, but just directly introduce the speaker, Sandipan Bhattacharjee. Sandipan currently serves as the chair of ISPOR Real World Evidence Special Interest Group, advancing global awareness and adoption of RWE. Sandipan is the director of real world evidence leader for oncology at Bayer, where he leads design and execution of RWE studies that support the oncology portfolio for Bayer. Prior to Bayer, he's also worked as a director of outcomes research at Otsuka Pharmaceutical. So without any further delay, over to you, Sandipan, to take us through this keynote session.
Sure. Thank you, Purav, and thanks to the entire Healthark's Insight team for the kind invitation, and very happy and thrilled to be here. So as Purav said, I have a very limited time, so I'm going to, and also it is my understanding that in the audience, there are people who are at various different stages of their exposure to real world evidence. So I'm going to set the stage with a little bit of background about what is RWD/E, and then we go into the actual main material of the presentation, focusing on the innovations in RWE. So a quick disclaimer that this presentation is based on my own training and experience and does not reflect the official policy or position of any organization or agency mentioned in this presentation. So as I mentioned, we are going to talk broadly about two topics or two things here in this presentation. One is understanding the real world evidence and its importance, and then the innovations in the field of RWE. So first, let's talk what is RWE and why is it important. And also please note that there is also going to be a little bit of this similar talk during our ISPOR session in an hour or so. So we'll have some time around during that session also to go over what is RWE and all. So basically, let's talk about what is real world data. So broadly speaking, the data that is routinely generated or collected in the course of healthcare delivery is termed as real world data. And also there is also a definition which says that any data that is collected outside of a randomized controlled trial or trials, it's called as real world data. Anything which is in terms of the real world is the real world data, broadly speaking. So some of the examples, and you may be aware of this, but there are a lot of different types of real world data, which includes electronic health records or EHRs, administrative or claims data, patient registries, patient generated information such as diaries or questionnaires, smart devices like in-home monitoring devices or apps on phones, and social media. Now, during the later part of my presentation, you will see that a lot of things we are talking about, some of this innovation parts where, the smart devices, PGHDs, and like patient generated health data or information, we are talking about those kind of innovations as well. But very quickly, I will give you one flavor, right? The electronic health records and administrative claims data and patient registries are perhaps some of the most widely used databases in the regular real world evidence space. However, not to say that we are also looking into the other types of data that are mentioned here. And social media data also plays an important role. And, there is a lot of things that people can do. And I will give a very quick example here that, I was participating in one of the conferences, and they were saying that they did a lot of cleaning of the Twitter data. And they were trying to look into the asthma related exacerbation and all. And there were certain things like, I was watching a Justin Bieber conference and I had an asthma attack. So these are some of the interesting things, how you clean this large level of data. Also, that is another type of innovations that people are working on and been working through. So least to say that it's a funny example, but the thing is we need to be very careful about how we process our data. But social media data can also play an important role in generating real world evidence. Now, what is real world evidence? Broadly speaking, these are the inferences that we derive from real world data through application of trusted scientific and statistical research methods in a rigorous manner. So that's like, we apply proper scientific methodologies, and this methodology is also another part of our innovation in terms of this RWE space. So based on all those analysis and through analyzing the data and all, what inferences we derive from that is our real world evidence. Now, some of the benefits of real world evidence. So we can conduct safety surveillance, very important for any company or any or in population in general. We can assess the treatment patterns, and you will see a lot of treatment pattern studies are being done to understand what is exactly going on, how treatment may have been changing over time, and so on, to look at temporal changes. Then the relevant regulatory decision making, like this is something that I'm going to discuss a little bit in detail later on, but this has generated a lot of more enthusiasm and interest in innovating more and more in the space of real world data or evidence. Now, why do we need the real world data evidence? For first of all, patients nowadays are living longer and wanting the best health possible. So for that, we need to generate a lot of different evidence which are properly generated, as I said, like with rigorous scientific methods, to provide those kind of details so that they can be helped. We can help the patients. From payer perspective, the cost, if you see the cost curve, it's rising everywhere in terms of healthcare. So how are we able to lower that cost, or at least make it like a very plateau at some point? So that is another thing that the real world evidence helps with. Regulatory decision we have already talked about, and we'll talk a little bit more as well. Pharmaceutical industry needs RWE studies to address effectiveness, value, and safety of their products. So there is a lot of unmet need stories and all that are being generated using this real world evidence. So, and there is a lot of other applications as well, but in short, these are the most important things that we are looking from an RWE perspective. Like, why do we need that? So now that we have set some of the ideas about RWD, RWE, and why is it important, let's discuss a little bit about the innovations that are happening in this field. So first and foremost, the regulatory frameworks or health technology assessment frameworks. So the regulatory bodies such as the FDA, they have established frameworks and guidelines for the use of RWE in regulatory decision making. And I'm hoping that many of you are aware that they have published this kind of guidelines already after having certain time period where it was available for public comment. And even we have provided comments about those kind of guidance document development. So this is an example, but what is really in there, which leads to this kind of innovations? So first and foremost, the FDA, what they are looking for is whether the data that we are using is fit for purpose. This fit for purpose, regulatory grade, research grade, there are a lot of different types of terminologies that you may hear, but the most important message that we need to keep to ourselves is whether the data that we are using is the right data to answer the research question that we have in mind, and whether the data has been collected in a very proper way, which leads to the data quality issues. And there is a lot of discussions around the data quality issues, whether it's related to claims data, patient registries, or electronic health records. So we have to be very very familiar with those kind of guidelines and frameworks to move forward. The other thing that this regulatory bodies such as FDAs have emphasis is the study design. The study design, and this is true for other people. So let me just take a step back and let me tell you that as of now, as far as I am aware, there are 55 or 55 plus guidance documents that have come from all around the world for RWE. And there is going to be a session in the European ISPOR where I'm participating as a panelist, where we are going to talk about how, whether we need more such like guidance, or is it too much or whatnot. But the thing is, there is a lot of enthusiasm and focus from the different regulatory and HTA bodies, and they are giving out all these frameworks and guidance documents and leading to innovations in this field. Now, we are talking about FDA. Same thing can be looked into, like from a, let's say, nice perspective in UK, like an HTA perspective. So they look for transparency, data suitability, and methods. So you will see that most of the overarching themes are kind of same. How they look into it is a bit different, like the details, but more or less they remain the same. And also for that, there is a lot of methodological innovations that are also happening to ensure proper study design, proper analytical techniques, and so on. So this has encouraged more and more companies to invest in real world studies. So this innovation, these are the things that are leading to this kind of innovations in this field, and it has become such a popular in today's world. And another example is, if you look at certain examples where real world evidence has been the primary source of effectiveness in a regulatory decision. For example, in tacrolimus or Prograf, it was approved by FDA for a new indication, which was on lung transplant in 2021, based on a comparison of outcomes like overall survival in patients that were captured in a real world registry with the published natural history study. So there is a huge, there is a very big unmet need in this area, and using the real world data, FDA was able to approve it just based on this RWE. So this additional indication. So that's why people are going more and more into this kind of work. So that's one type of innovation. The next is the advanced analytics and machine learning techniques. Now, the use of machine learning algorithms and advanced analytic techniques has improved the ability to analyze large data sets from electronic health records, claims data, and patient registries. So, using some of these advanced techniques and using it like a data-driven approach, we have observed that there is a lot of this patterns that were previously not identified using the traditional techniques, but we are able to unearth those kind of things to understand what are the hidden patterns, what kind of new things are coming up, and so on. So this advanced analytics is disrupting a lot of things. For example, right? So previously, when I was a graduate student, we had to do a lot of manual programming to analyze the claims data or different types of real world data. Nowadays, there is a lot of point and click approaches. As long as the proper study design is set, they can be analyzed very quickly and at scale. So this has enhanced how quickly we can get to the results. Rather than waiting for months, we can do it in perhaps weeks. So that is also another kind of innovations that are people constantly doing it. Some companies have done it. Many pharma companies are doing it within in-house and so on. So a lot of things are going on. Some advanced techniques around this, for example, the example of synthetic data, right? So this is also gaining quite a bit of traction, so to speak. And synthetic data like digital twins and different types of synthetic data, garbage in, garbage out is an issue. But as long as our parent data is good, a lot of good information can be replicated, particularly where there are issues with rare diseases and stuff like that, or where we need more data but we don't have that data. So those kind of things. And this digital twins, they may be used for in hospital settings where people can change the volume of patients, the number of staff available, and different parameters, and see what exactly are the resources that we need to allocate at different times and all. So this advanced techniques, advanced learnings, methodologies, they have disrupted this field quite a bit. So there is another significant portion of the innovation that is happening in this particular area. The next one is very interesting. Like I'm personally, I'm very interested in this particular area. Of course, in other ones as well. But the digital health technologies, with the rise in mobile health apps, wearables, telehealth platforms, they provide new avenues for collecting real-time patient data. And this is another very important thing to keep in mind. Even a few years back, if you see that there's a lag time by the time the process data comes out, the people who are working on the research study get access to them, and by the time they finish up the study, the data may already be a bit old, depending on the research question, right? So for that, what we have seen is there is a lot of newer data coming up, and we'll talk a little bit more about that down the line. That as we innovate in this field, we are getting more real-time data. The EHRs are becoming very real-time. The claims data, closed versus open claims, they're very real-time. So we are getting very up-to-date information. Like if there is a new drug that came into the market, we analyze some of the updated data that becomes available. We get to know how physicians, how they have been prescribed, which physicians may be prescribing them, and so on. So this kind of real-time data is also very important, and we get to know some of the very valuable insights into treatment efficacy and adherence. And I will give you a very quick example here. Like, I have seen some drugs where there is a chip inside, and if they are properly taking it, that gets into your system, and they say that the data gets recorded, and we see whether the patients have been actually adherent to the treatment or not. Because even if they're filling up their prescription or refilling their prescriptions, we never really know whether they have taken it or not. So that kind of innovation had led to understanding of, from a company perspective or any other perspective, whether they are actually taking the medication or not. So this is just an example, but this is also a very important innovation that is happening in this field. Yeah. So the next, which is kind of in line with what we just discussed, is the integration of diverse data sources. Now, we talked about claims, we talked about patient registries, we talked about EHRs. The problem is, particularly from a US standpoint, there is a fragmentation. Like we don't know, like, if a person is not in the health plan anymore, the claims data stops there. We don't see them anymore. If the patient goes outside of that EHR system and gets a care, we don't know what they are getting or what kind of treatment they are having or issues they are having. Same goes for all other types of databases. So for that, and this is a very, very interesting part to me, that we are trying to connect all these dots together to get a longitudinal story for the patient journey. So for that, we have been doing tokenization. And this is also a very innovative thing that is happening in the field of RWE, where tokenized data is giving us a much better insight into like the treatment effects, patient experiences, providing a full holistic picture as much as possible to us. Now, tokenization itself is a very broad topic. It includes a lot of different nuances, from patient privacy protection to implementing them. So we can talk about this a lot, but given the time that I have, I'm just going to give you guys a flavor around this. Now, having said all the good things about tokenization, one of the issues is not all the data is being tokenized. There are different types of tokens that are being developed, and they may not it is not still at a position where we can have all the data that can be connected. So there is quite a bit of work that is still being done. And also, this thing I will talk during the ISPOR perspective talk, how to handle tokenized data, because the randomized control trials, they are also being tokenized, that after the clinical trial ends, we connect them with real world data and see how the patients are doing down the line. because previously we never really bothered to see what happened after the trial is over for a short duration of time. And particularly with newer innovative therapies such as cell and gene therapy, prescription digital therapy that are coming up, this is becoming more and more to provide the durability of response, to understand the durability of response. So that's where tokenization is making a big contribution, I would say. So that's a very significant innovation that has been happening in this field. Then the next one, this is a part of like large language model, AI ML technique, which is a natural language processing. So this particular technique helps to extract valuable information from unstructured data such as clinical note and research articles. Now, if you think about this, particularly for certain types of disease areas such as psychiatry or maybe even oncology, where the notes that are written in by the physicians, they are like, they are information gold mines, right? So but we have not been able to use it because the data analysis that we have been doing is primarily focused on structured data. But for the unstructured data, it was an untapped opportunity for a long time, even though we have made a giant strides in this field so far, but it is still like being looked into. So as long as we are using this kind of techniques and we are extracting data or creating labels and so on from clinical notes, we are getting really good understanding. Like, why was the treatment really discontinued? Do we really know that? Maybe it's available from the physician notes. So that provides an information like, okay, that was the unmet need. That was the reason why the patient or the provider decided not to go on with the therapy. What else can we do to help the patient? So those kind of things. So this innovations, this kind of advanced analysis and all, helps synthesizing insights from vast amount of textual information. So which is gaining more and more traction. And when we are looking at EHR, we always see like the unstructured data converted into structured formats and getting labels and so on. So I know that I'm going a bit fast, but please bear with me. The next very important innovation I would say is happening is looking into the patient-centric approaches. Now, in the past few years or past decade or so, I would say that the patient community has become very vocal in this area. Like, they are vocal in the sense that they would like to share their stories. They would like to say what they really need, what kind of treatment they would prefer. So things like that. So for that also, in many cases, the patients are getting involved in research processes, including like study design, what kind of outcomes they would really like to see from a patient perspective. So this kind of information, sometimes people start like kick off their study by having patient advocacy groups or patients themselves and kind of understanding these nuances and incorporating them in their studies, which never used to be the case, or at least very rarely used to be the case before. So this is also a significant innovation that is happening in RWE. And this shift helps ensure that the evidence that is being generated is really relevant to the real world patients, because whatever we do may or may not be very important to the patients. So putting in their perspective helps us make it more applicable to the real world. So that is also a significant innovation that is happening nowadays. And I hope that it continues and becomes more and more included in our research. Now, one of the other things that I would like to mention is the blockchain technology. Now, innovations in blockchain technology are being explored to secure and to explore for secure and transparent data sharing. Now, you think about this, all the different sources of data like claims, EHR, patient registries, and so on, they are sharing the data. How can they, or even within the EHR system, different groups are sharing their data. How can it be securely transferred? How can we be transparent about the data that are coming in and so on? For that, the blockchain technology and enhance the trust among the stakeholders and protect patient privacy. And there is a lot of work that are being done in this area which looks into data integrity and security and all the points that I have mentioned in the sub bullet points here. The patient consent management, very important, like how what the patient really thinks should be done with his or her data. Decentralized data sharing, traceability and provenance, very important. Where the data is really coming from, can we go back and trace them and see if that is proper and not. Tokenization, if we are sharing and linking the different data, this blockchain technology is very important. And interoperability of the different systems. So all these important things put together is really helping move the needle forward in terms of innovations in the field of RWD/E. Because once we have much better security system, people are much more at ease that their data is being used properly. So even though this part particularly, I must say, is not being focused that much nowadays, like in the not focused in the sense like from a RWE perspective, but there is a lot of work that is going on, and many companies are involved in this so that we have a proper data set moving forward. So these are all the innovations that are happening very quickly that I was able to present during this time. Innovations that are helping bridge the gap between the clinical trials and everyday clinical practice. And ultimately, it is improving the patient care and informing healthcare decision making. So I have, like, I see maybe another 2 minutes of time. So I will just stop and see if there are any particular question. And first of all, thank you for listening. And sorry, I had to go a bit fast.
Sandipan, thank you for the insightful session. Yeah, thanks to the audience as well. Stay tuned. We have an exciting episode of Real World Wednesday podcast coming soon. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Purav, and thank you everyone for listening. And good luck.